This is definitely the most thrilling doomsday survival documentary of the year. A plan to release nuclear-contaminated water into the sea triggered a global zombie apocalypse. I am a junior researcher at the Marine Observatory. This is my doomsday survival story, a memoir of struggling to survive under a zombie horde. All survivors, are you ready to face the darkest truth of this apocalypse? Right now I'm with the village chief at the shelter entrance, surrounded by survivors from the hostile faction. The other party asked me to hand over the belongings I was carrying, but I was already prepared to fight to the death. Just as the situation was about to spiral out of control, the village chief suddenly stepped in to stop both sides and proposed a battle plan that could prevent infighting among the survivors. There is a warehouse full of fireworks located 5 miles west of the village. By using the loud noises from setting off the fireworks, we might be able to attract all the zombies from the surrounding villages in that direction. This way, the survivors in the village will feel less stressed and have the opportunity to collect survival resources scattered throughout the village. Meanwhile, considering the extensive damage caused by the fireworks warehouse explosion, if we make proper arrangements in the fireworks field in advance, we might be able to use this opportunity to eliminate a large number of zombies, preventing them from threatening the village and farms for a short period of time. At the moment, inside the village chief's shelter, everyone fell silent after hearing the village chief's plan. In the long run, it is indeed more reasonable than a group of people stuck in a village fighting over resources. However, from a practical standpoint, deciding who will be responsible for going to the fireworks factory and igniting the fireworks is a difficult choice, as no one knows what obstacles they may encounter along the way. If you were to encounter a massive zombie horde in the open wilderness with no chance to defend or escape, it would be a mission with a slim chance of survival. The young people gathered together for a moment to discuss. Then their leader stepped forward to negotiate with me. "Please show us your medicine," he said. "We have someone here who is very sick." I hesitated for a moment, but the village chief nodded at me, so I handed the first aid kit to the leader. The leader quickly checked the first aid kit. His expression softened slightly. He then immediately asked a young and agile man to take the medicine back. The leader then looked at the village chief and glanced at me coldly, asking, "Is this person going with you too?" The village chief frowned and said, "Each of the 3 parties will send a representative to carry out the plan. This person represents the mountain farm. After the plan succeeds, the resources obtained will be distributed according to the number of people. No one will lose out. After that, you cannot harass their family for any reason." The leader showed a displeased expression immediately after hearing it. He turned his head and said with cold eyes, "Your family has successfully avoided the zombie outbreak. You're safe on the mountain with food and drink, which is already very lucky, right? Why not make a greater contribution and share supplies with those who need them more?" After listening, I clenched my fist in silent anger. I felt a surge of nameless fury. Was this guy implying that only their people were considered human, and everyone else didn't count as people? But I knew it wasn't the time to argue, so I replied expressionlessly, "Once this is settled, I'll take my share. How to use the resources is my business. Nobody can interfere with each other." The leader didn't seem satisfied with my answer, but didn't question further. Instead, he turned around and went back to his small group. A few people whispered and discussed for a moment. Then the leader chose a representative. Surprisingly, it was the most impatient young man who almost shot an arrow at me earlier outside. I felt a sense of hostility from them. About to protest, the village head gently held my arm and whispered to me, "I know this child. He's a good kid who is honest and hardworking, just a bit hot-tempered. He used to work in the fields. He was the fastest and most agile. They have indeed chosen the most suitable representative for the task." When I heard that, I forced down my displeasure and glanced at the young man. He had clear, clean eyes and looked at me with some caution, but without any malice. I suddenly realized that the young person's face looked somewhat familiar, as if I had seen it somewhere before I could even think about it. The village chief suddenly exclaimed loudly, "While it's still early, let's start preparing now. Get your protective gear and weapons ready. Once we step out of this door, both of you will follow my commands. Stop when I say so. Run when I say so. Understand?" After listening to the village chief's instructions, I checked my protective gear one more time, took a deep breath, and nodded to the village chief. The young man then took off the bow and arrow, and received a steel pipe wrapped with nails from his companion. It was clear that he was not good at using the bow and arrow. Such a thing would only be used to scare survivors at most. When facing a zombie wave, it's better to use close combat weapons. The village chief then puts on a mining headlamp to ensure that his hands are free for combat in the dark scene. While we were both getting ready, the young man cautiously approached me, his voice slightly hoarse, and hesitantly asked, "When you were on the mountaintop, did you see any survivors running up seeking help?" This caught me off guard, and I was stunned on the spot. The first thing that came to my mind was the worker who triggered the first wave of zombies. Looking at the young man's face, I suddenly remembered where I had seen him before. The child looks quite similar to the worker, maybe around 70 to 80% alike. Considering their ages, the worker could possibly be the young person's father. I felt my heart stop for a moment. The tragedy of that worker being engulfed by a wave of zombies flashed before my eyes, and for a moment I didn't know how to answer the young man's question. He saw me not responding for a while, and then the young man, looking hopeless, lowered his eyes and said something to himself. He said that after the zombie horde arrived, none of us dared to go out, and we were short of water, food, and most importantly, medication. His father mentioned that he had worked for a family at the mountain farm a few days ago, and knew they had stocked up on supplies. He suggested going up the mountain to ask them for some. Dad was spotted by a horde of zombies right at the village entrance. We couldn't save him in time and had to helplessly watch as the zombies dragged him into the forest. After that, no one else came out. As the words fell, the young young man lifted his head, his eyes filled with burning anger. "Those damn animals. I swear I'll burn them to ashes," he declared. I listened quietly, too scared to respond, just nodded slightly. It's hard to imagine the pain that worker went through to escape the zombie tide. It's also hard to imagine how hopeless he must have felt when my father and I shut him out. I feel my heart is trembling violently. I have to force myself to stay strong, keep telling myself that this is the end of the world. It's okay to be selfish. You are not a god. You don't have to be responsible for every stranger's life. Just when I was feeling agitated, the village chief cleared his throat and ordered in no uncertain terms, "Get ready to go. Let's set off fireworks." As the garage door slowly opens, the survivors inside the shelter, along with the leader's followers, all stand up and gather at the door. Their eyes carry silent blessings, praying for the safe return of the 3 individuals. I gently touch the inside of my arm, where my daughter signed her name in English. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, we hurried along a quiet path towards the direction of the fireworks factory. It was already past noon, but the sky above us, filled with dark clouds, seemed as if night was falling. The upcoming heavy rain may have both pros and cons for us. On the bright side, the rain can wash away our scent, making it hard for zombies to track us. However, the downside is that the fireworks may not be as effective during the heavy rain. The 3 of us moved forward cautiously, feeling extremely tense. None of us spoke a word as we walked through the vast wilderness, with distant hills shrouded in mist appearing and disappearing. In the distant city, it seems to be burning in a fierce fire. Black columns of smoke rise on the horizon, painting half the sky blood red. Only the howling wind can be heard, along with the heavy footsteps of 3 people, followed by a deathly silence. The bustling world of the past seems to be fading away along with memories. While passing through a tunnel, the village chief spotted a burning truck blocking the path at the other end. Listen to the noises inside. The truck driver seems to be trapped dead in the driver's seat. After all these days, he must have turned into a zombie, emitting heart-wrenching screams from the culvert. We had to detour around the culvert and drive across the highway overpass above it. We passed through the highway crowded with abandoned vehicles. Scenes of shocking devastation unfolding before our eyes. Vehicles piled on top of each other, twisted and deformed, with broken glass, torn clothes, sticky bloodstains, children's dolls, and family photos scattered everywhere, all covered in countless fresh red footprints. It looks like there was a brutal massacre here, and what's even more unsettling is that there are only bloodstains, but no bodies in sight. The young man stopped in front of a burnt-out bus and stood there in a daze for a while, until the village chief quietly urged him. Finally, the young man, feeling lost, spoke up. I made plans with her to go home together for the holiday and introduce her to my dad. Unexpectedly, on the way back on the bus, a passenger next to the driver turned into a zombie. Everyone on the bus had nowhere to escape. I smashed the window and managed to escape, but I couldn't bring her out in time. I could only hold her hand, listening to her begging for help until countless hands dragged her back into the car, all covered in blood everywhere. I just noticed that the young man was gently rubbing a ring in his hand. The ring was covered in dried blood stains. He held it in his palm as if he was holding someone's hand. The village chief and I didn't say anything. We just watched the young man mourn quietly in front of the bus. We arrived at the fireworks factory in the evening. The factory building stood not far from the roadside, and the gate was locked. We had to climb over the wall to get in. The warehouse's big door was wide open, and it looked like the manager of the fireworks factory left in a hurry. After looking around, we confirmed that there were no zombies inside the fireworks factory, so we decided to spend the night there. The village chief took off his backpack and pulled out a small bucket of gasoline. "This is for setting off the fireworks factory." We first picked out 2 boxes of welcoming fireworks and placed them on the open ground as backup. This type of fireworks makes a loud explosion, which can be heard by zombies within a radius of 20 miles. The village chief then led the young people out with 2 strings of firecrackers, grinning and saying, "Let's have a lively Halloween party tomorrow." After nightfall, 3 people gathered in the corner of the warehouse and lit a candle. We nibbled on cold bread by the dim candlelight. The village chief looked expressionless, while the young man seemed burdened with worries. After a long silence, the young person suddenly said to me, "Did you already know about the virus? My father told me early on. He took on a big job to fix a wall for a strange family up on the mountain. It was only later that I found out that family was yours." The village chief gave me a look without saying anything, then picked up the knife and went out for patrol. I didn't look up, just quietly nibbled on my bread. The young man, on the other hand, increased his tone and said, "You knew everything already. You had the chance to save more people, right?" At times like this, I don't feel like arguing with him about this. The air here makes me feel uneasy for some reason, and the ominous feeling I had in the village before is creeping back, making my heart beat faster for no reason. The young person was about to ask more questions. I suddenly snuffed out the candle and made a gesture for him to keep quiet. He gave me a glare and then listened carefully as I pointed. At this moment, it's starting to drizzle outside with the sound of rustling rain. The strong wind is shaking the distant mountains and forests, producing a sharp howling sound. Beyond the wind and rain, we hear a piercing cry coming from the darkness of the night. The call is both familiar and strange, like the whispers we heard when dealing with the corpses in the village before. Upon closer listening, the sound forms intermittent sentences, sounding like a cry for help from a survivor. The village chief hurried over, looking unsure of what was happening outside. I suggested that the young people and I go out to see what's going on, as there might be survivors out there who are separated from the group. The village chief approved my plan. He took off his mining helmet and handed it to the young man, reminding us to be extremely careful. We sneaked our way out of the warehouse, advancing through the chilling driving wind and drizzling rain. Following the sound, we kept sneaking until we reached the dark edge of the forest. At that moment, the sound became clearer than before, and it turned out to be the chilling cry of a woman. It was so scary to hear her crying, and what's even more unsettling is the strong foul smell coming from the woods in front of me. Just as I was trying to take a step forward to see the situation, the young man suddenly grabbed me and without hesitation lit the lantern above our heads. Under the harsh white light, the scene before us made our hearts skip a beat. We saw countless zombies gathered in the forest ahead, their wriggling figures everywhere. They were crouched on the ground, gnawing on the survivors, slowly swallowing while opening their mouths wide, mimicking the voices of the deceased. "Help me, I don't want to die. Help me, I don't want to die."